The Supreme Court has affirmed a 2000 ruling that Washington, D.C. is not constitutionally entitled to voting representation in Congress. The decision was issued in a short statement, no longer than a few sentences, and with no hearing. One of the primary reasons cited for the decision is the fact that D.C. is not a state. D.C. statehood activists have argued that their inability to vote for Congress members violates their equal protection rights. They also contest the fairness of voting rights extended to residents living overseas, but not to D.C. residents in similar situations. D.C.'s statehood and Congress representation fight has become yet another point of contention between conservatives and progressives, with conservatives arguing that both pushes are efforts by progressives to further their agenda of adding votes in the House and Senate. Joining us to discuss is Democratic strategist Michael Starr Hopkins. So, Michael, what do you make of the courts, doing this in a short statement, no hearing, and kind of dismissing it out of hand?
Look, as a Washingtonian, it's just another insult when it comes to D.C. and our ability to have representation, whether it be our denial of statehood, whether it be the Supreme Court not actually holding a hearing. It's once again a denial of Washingtonians and a continued treatment of us as second-class citizens.
So what does the fight for statehood go from here?
At some point, we've got to grow the Democratic majority to a point where we can put it up to a vote, and both the House and the Senate can give D.C. statehood. The fact that D.C. is treated unlike anywhere else, but is often criticized by Republicans as being, the swamp, I think is an insult to all the hardworking people who go to work every day and are lifelong Washingtonians like myself.
So, this fight has been going on for statehood, or the requests or demands for statehood have been going on for decades. You say that you have to increase the number of, representatives in Congress who are in favor of statehood. I assume that means that overlaps quite a bit with the Democratic Party. But right now, the Democrats hold a very slim margin. They're not even taking it up, and they may be in danger of losing control of one or both houses in the midterms. How optimistic are you that anytime in the near future that this will be something that Congress takes up?
It's going to be tough in the short term. Look, let's not kid ourselves. If D.C. looked less like Chocolate City and more like Mississippi, I think you'd see a lot more Republicans willing to talk about D.C. getting statehood. But D.C. votes 98% Democrat. It's a majority African-American city. And Republicans are clear why they want to deny us citizenship. D.C. has more people than states like Wyoming, states like North Dakota, but yet is treated less than. So, there's a hypocrisy that I think we all can't deny.
So, just talk that through, the kind of racial nature of the denial of D.C., because it also extends to places like Puerto Rico, which does not, have the representation in the same way that a state would, does not have the same rights that a state would, and there are people of color. How do we deal with that? How do we justify that in D.C. when it is the people of color, the places where they live, that are being denied this representation, but the people where places where white people live, with very few people are not?
I mean, let's just be honest about it. This is a vestige of Jim Crow. When you have a city like Washington, D.C., a place with so much power, so much culture, when you have places like Puerto Rico, which are people of color, it's not an accident that they're being denied the right to exercise their vote, that they're being denied their citizenship, and to some degree denied their humanity. Because when you can't participate in government fully, you can't really express your rights. And that's exactly what's happening here. And it's not an accident that it's happening to people of color. Republicans are intentionally denying people from DC, people from Puerto Rico, the right to vote, because they know that by empowering African Americans and empowering Puerto Ricans, that there will likely be an increase in voting for Democrats. This is not just political, but it's racial, and it's cruel.
So with the Supreme Court kind of basically dismissing this argument, does that mean that the legal side, the court avenue, is basically closed for now, that the only avenue left is legislative?
I'm not aware of any cases that could be brought before the court right now. But one thing Democrats need to really seriously consider is adding new justices to the court and expanding the court. Because what we're seeing from a court right now, the Supreme Court right now, is a overtly political court that is getting ready to abolish Roe versus Wade, that has already disenfranchised African Americans all across the country, and has now refused to take up statehood for DC. So at some point, Democrats have to do a better job of standing up for African Americans, who've been the most consistent voters for the Democratic Party since we gained the right to vote.
Michael Starr Hopkins, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it. We're going to keep an eye on this DC statehood story. It's been around for a while, but it's not going anywhere, and it's a really, really important story for Black people and for the country. Thank you so much.